Shocking kidnapping case. A 13-year-old girl's courageous fight against evil. In today's video, we dive deep into the shocking story of a 13-year-old girl, Lucy, who, against all odds, finds herself facing the horrors of kidnapping, crime, and unimaginable betrayal. Lucy's courage shines through as she battles to protect innocent lives, unveiling a dark secret behind a notorious kidnapping syndicate. Stay tuned to see how her actions change everything and the truth about the people behind this cruel operation. If you want to know more, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Stories TH for more incredible stories like this. The story begins with a harrowing and dramatic scene where a 13-year-old girl, Lucy, arrives home in the middle of a storm, terrified and holding two newborn babies. Her clothes are torn, stained with blood, and she is visibly shaken. As the rain pounds fiercely against the roof, the atmosphere inside the house becomes suffocating, filled with anxiety and confusion. When Lucy bursts through the door, her mother Mary is immediately alarmed by the sight of her daughter, her heart racing as she tries to understand what's happening. Lucy's voice trembles as she explains, though her words are difficult to comprehend. She tells her mother that the blood covering her isn't her own, but that of someone named Emma, leaving Mary utterly confused and terrified. The tension builds when the police arrive and begin investigating the situation. As they examine the babies, Officer Valerie Sanders notes that they are incredibly weak, barely clinging to life, while Lucy remains tightly clutching them, her fear evident in every tremble. The young girl's inability to recall how she found the babies only adds to the mystery, leaving the police and Mary perplexed. The investigation shifts to a nearby abandoned warehouse, where the officers uncover a chilling crime scene. A girl, Emma Foster, only 16 years old, bound to a chair, her life brutally taken. The shock and sorrow deepen when the police discover a silver necklace in Emma's hand, a necklace that Mary recognizes as one she gave to Emma for her birthday. This revelation hits Mary hard as she realizes the horrific extent of the tragedy, and her daughter, Lucy, is left with a growing sense of guilt and despair. Lucy's emotional turmoil is palpable, especially as she learns that Emma had been desperately trying to escape before her death. However, the real twist comes when Lucy hesitantly reveals that she saw a familiar face at the scene, James Grayson, a known criminal connected to a series of violent crimes. The possibility that he's involved in Emma's death sends shockwaves through the investigation, setting the stage for an even darker revelation about his involvement in human trafficking. As the story unfolds, the police begin to close in on James Grayson, racing against time to prevent him from causing more harm. With Mary and Lucy in grave danger, they are placed under protection, but their fear grows as they know that Grayson is still out there, determined to silence anyone who knows the truth. Despite the constant threat, Lucy finds the courage to confront her past, recounting what she knows about Emma's final moments. The emotional toll on her is immense, and her struggle to come to terms with the events weighs heavily on her. The mystery surrounding Emma's death and the connection to James Grayson only deepens as the investigation continues, with the realization that his criminal activities reach far beyond Emma's murder. The police uncover a network of human traffickers, and it becomes clear that Grayson is at the center of it all, exploiting vulnerable young women for profit. The severity of his crimes sparks a new sense of urgency, as they realize just how many lives have been destroyed by his actions. The search for justice culminates in a dramatic confrontation, with the police finally capturing James Grayson. However, despite his capture, the emotional scars left on Mary and Lucy remain. For Lucy, the guilt and trauma of what she witnessed will stay with her, but through the support of her mother and the police, she begins to heal. The story concludes with a bittersweet sense of relief as justice is served, but the cost of that justice is deeply felt. Lucy and Mary's journey highlights the strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable hardship, as they find hope and solace in the light after the darkness they endured. This powerful tale not only keeps the audience on the edge of their seat with its suspense and tension, but also explores themes of family, loss, guilt, and the pursuit of justice. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, particularly in the face of trauma, as Lucy and Mary's courage ultimately leads to a sense of peace after a long, heartbreaking struggle. In a gripping and emotionally charged narrative, a 13-year-old girl named Lucy arrives home one stormy night, carrying two newborn babies in her arms. Her clothes are torn, covered in blood, and she is visibly terrified. The heavy rain pounds against the roof of the small house, but the true weight of the moment lies in the suffocating tension that fills the room. As Lucy steps inside, her mother, Mary, is immediately struck by the horrific scene in front of her. Lucy's voice trembles as she clutches the fragile babies, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She is barely able to explain what has happened. Blood stains her clothes, but not from her. It's from someone named Emma, someone Lucy seems to have been with before arriving home. Mary is frantic, but the true mystery deepens when Lucy mentions that Emma is the one who is injured, not her, and that she doesn't remember much of what happened. The police arrive shortly after, and as they assess the situation, Officer Valerie Sanders examines the babies. They are weak, barely breathing, and it's clear they need immediate medical attention. Despite the urgency, Lucy remains in a state of shock and fear, unable to recall the events leading up to her discovery of the babies. She only mentions an abandoned warehouse on the southern road, a place that's hauntingly familiar, but also the scene of something much darker. The tension escalates when the police investigate the warehouse, uncovering a gruesome crime scene. Emma Foster, a 16-year-old girl, is found tied to a chair, dead, with a horrifying struggle evident in the blood smeared across the room. What stuns Mary further is the discovery of a silver necklace in Emma's hand, a gift she had given to her niece. The necklace's presence sends chills down Mary's spine, and she realizes that Emma's tragic fate is even more personal than she had imagined. The emotional weight of the moment hits hard as the police realize that someone, likely James Grayson, a known criminal, is behind these terrible acts. The mystery deepens when Lucy, though frightened and shaken, finally remembers a crucial detail. She saw James Grayson at the scene. This revelation stuns the officers, particularly because James has a criminal history tied to a series of human trafficking and violent crimes. He is immediately marked as the prime suspect in Emma's murder. As the investigation intensifies, Lucy's emotional struggle is made even worse by her guilt. She feels she could have done more to help Emma, but was too late to save her. The police assure her that she did everything she could, but the weight of the past still lingers heavily on her shoulders. In a series of tense moments, the police take immediate action to apprehend James Grayson. They are aware of the danger he poses, not only to the two infants Lucy saved, but also to many others who have fallen victim to his criminal network. The urgency of finding James becomes even more apparent when it's discovered that he has been running a human trafficking ring, abducting women and selling babies to the highest bidders. As the police tighten their grip on James, Lucy's life takes a dramatic turn. She and her mother, Mary, are placed under protection, but the fear of James's retaliation lingers in the air. Lucy must now confront the horrors of what she has witnessed, but she also begins to find the courage to speak out, recounting what she knows about Emma's last moments. Her bravery and strength become pivotal in the investigation, and the truth about James's involvement in human trafficking begins to unfold. The narrative reaches its climax as James is eventually captured, but the emotional toll on Lucy and her mother is far from over. Lucy is left to deal with the psychological scars of the trauma she experienced, but with her mother's support, she slowly begins to heal. The story ultimately becomes a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of standing up against evil, no matter how overwhelming or terrifying it may seem. This story is a powerful reflection of the lengths to which one will go to protect the innocent, even in the face of immense fear and personal loss. Lucy's courage and her mother's unwavering love show us that no matter how dark the world becomes, there is always hope for justice and redemption. Through their journey, we see that with the truth comes healing, and with healing comes the possibility of moving forward toward a brighter future. The story resonates deeply with the importance of family, compassion, and justice in the face of tragedy, and the indomitable will to overcome life's darkest moments. The story unfolds with a chilling and intense sequence of events that begins on a stormy night. A 13-year-old girl, Lucy, returns home under horrifying circumstances, carrying two newborn babies in her arms. Her clothes are torn and stained with blood. While she is visibly trembling, her body cold with fear. As she enters her home, the tension in the air is palpable. Her mother, Mary, is taken aback by the scene and immediately feels a sense of dread when she realizes the gravity of the situation. Lucy is barely able to speak, her voice cracking as she says, "It's not me, it's Emma." The revelation hits Mary hard as she begins to understand that the blood staining her daughter's clothes is not hers. It belongs to Emma, a young girl whose fate will soon be revealed as the mystery unfolds. Lucy's inability to recall what happened or where the blood came from only deepens the confusion, and Mary's concern escalates as she tries to make sense of the situation. The two babies in Lucy's arms, frail and weak, are examined by the police, and it is immediately clear that they need medical attention. Officer Valerie Sanders, who is part of the responding team, takes charge of the babies while Officer Charles Mitchell presses Lucy for answers. Yet Lucy remains haunted by the events that led to her discovery of the babies. She finally manages to recall a horrifying detail. She found the babies at an abandoned warehouse near the Southern Road, a place that had been linked to criminal activity before. The story takes an even darker turn when the officers investigate the warehouse and uncover the blood-stained remnants of a struggle. The body of Emma Foster, a 16-year-old girl, is discovered tied to a chair, lifeless, her fear frozen in her wide, empty eyes. The emotional weight of the discovery is staggering. Emma's connection to Lucy and her mother is revealed through a silver necklace found in Emma's hand, a gift from Mary to her niece the previous year. This personal connection amplifies the horror of the crime and sends shockwaves through Mary, who realizes the depth of the tragedy. Emma's life was tragically cut short, and the search for answers intensifies as the police realize that the person responsible for this is none other than James Grayson, a notorious criminal involved in human trafficking. The investigation takes a sharp turn when Lucy bravely identifies James as the man she saw near the warehouse, sending a wave of fear through the police officers as they race against time to find him before he can carry out any more of his nefarious plans. As the story progresses, Lucy is left to grapple with a profound sense of guilt. She is haunted by the thought that if only she had arrived sooner, she might have been able to save Emma. However, the police assure her that she did everything she could to help, even saving the two babies from a fate far worse than death. The emotional burden on Lucy is immense, but with her mother's support, she begins to find the strength to speak out and confront the horrors she has witnessed. The determination to bring justice for Emma and the babies fuels the investigation, pushing the police forward in their pursuit of James Grayson, who is revealed to be at the heart of a human trafficking operation. As the network begins to unravel, the officers discover that James has been involved in a vast illegal trade, abducting women and selling babies overseas. The investigation takes a dangerous turn as the police race to stop James from fleeing the country. The suspense reaches a fever pitch when a black car speeds away from the scene, signaling that James is trying to escape. The police are hot on his trail, but James proves to be elusive, always staying one step ahead. Despite this, the pursuit continues, and the police are determined to bring him to justice. Meanwhile, Mary and Lucy remain in hiding, terrified that James will come after them next, but the officers reassure them that they are doing everything in their power to protect them. Finally, in a dramatic showdown, James Grayson is apprehended, and the truth about his involvement in the human trafficking ring comes to light. Lucy and Mary's lives are forever changed by the traumatic events they've witnessed, but they find solace in knowing that they are safe and that justice has been served. The emotional journey of Lucy, from her initial terror to her eventual courage in facing the truth, serves as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the importance of standing up against evil, no matter how terrifying it may seem. This story highlights the deep love between mother and daughter, the resilience to overcome immense challenges, and the pursuit of justice in the face of overwhelming adversity. The story takes a dark and unexpected turn when a 13-year-old girl named Lucy returns home during a fierce storm, clutching two newborn babies in her arms. The sheer horror and urgency of the situation are immediately apparent as Lucy's clothes are torn and stained with blood. Her pale, trembling figure and the faint cries of the fragile babies she holds evoke a chilling sense of confusion and fear. Her mother, Mary, is stunned by the sight of her daughter covered in blood, unsure of what has transpired. Lucy's inability to recall the details of the night further deepens the mystery. She only whispers, "It's not me. It's Emma." The revelation hits Mary like a punch to the gut. Emma, a young girl related to them, is dead, and her body is tied up in an abandoned warehouse, a grisly scene that will unfold as the investigation progresses. In the midst of the chaos, Officer Charles Mitchell and his team arrive on the scene. The urgency is palpable as Officer Valerie Sanders carefully examines the two babies, determining that they are in critical condition and need immediate medical attention. Yet, the real mystery lies with Lucy, who is visibly shaken and struggling to remember what happened. The detectives press her for answers, and after much hesitation, Lucy finally recalls seeing the babies at an abandoned warehouse. The horrific image of the warehouse bloodstains smeared across the floor and desperate handprints on the walls paints a grim picture. The detectives now understand the depth of the crime they are dealing with, but it only deepens the questions. Who did this, and why? As the story progresses, the dark truth begins to emerge. The body of Emma Foster, a 16-year-old girl, is discovered in the warehouse. She has been brutally murdered, her wrists bound tightly to a wooden chair, and signs of struggle are evident in the room. The shock hits Mary even harder when she learns that Emma's silver necklace, a gift she had given her niece the previous year, is found clutched in Emma's lifeless hand. This personal connection amplifies the grief Mary feels. Emma's death becomes the pivotal moment that sparks the investigation into the horrific crime. The police are left with one unsettling question: who could commit such a heinous act? The investigation intensifies when Lucy bravely identifies the suspect, James Grayson, a dangerous criminal with ties to a human trafficking ring. He's the key figure behind the abduction and exploitation of young women, and Lucy's encounter with him at the warehouse only confirms the severity of the crime. As the authorities track down leads and uncover James's network, the realization sets in. These babies weren't just abandoned, they were part of a larger, much more sinister operation. The story turns darker still as Lucy battles with guilt. Despite her best efforts, she believes she could have saved Emma if she had arrived earlier. However, the police assure her that it wasn't her fault. She is a hero for saving the two babies, and her courage to speak up allows the authorities to close in on the criminal network. While Lucy struggles with the trauma of what she's witnessed, Mary's unwavering support helps her regain some semblance of strength. Together, they endure the emotional fallout, but the fear remains. The authorities have put measures in place to protect them, but the threat of retaliation from James still lingers. As the police continue their investigation, more disturbing details come to light about James's involvement in a global child trafficking syndicate. He wasn't just a murderer, he was the mastermind behind an international operation that exploited vulnerable women and children. The network spans countries and continents, with forged documents used to sell newborn babies into forced labor and illegal adoptions. As the authorities move forward with the case, their resolve hardens. James must be stopped before more innocent lives are destroyed. In the final stages of the investigation, the police prepare to confront James. They have tracked him to a location where he's planning his escape. The suspense reaches its peak as the police launch a dramatic operation to apprehend him, knowing that this could be their last chance to put an end to his reign of terror. The emotional stakes are high as Lucy and Mary, though still shaken, begin to find some sense of relief, knowing that justice is within reach. The police successfully locate James, and after a tense confrontation, he is finally arrested. However, the journey is far from over. The investigation continues as they dismantle the trafficking network, ensuring that no one else will suffer the way Emma and others have. Through this dark and gripping narrative, we see the strength of a young girl, the unwavering support of a mother, and the relentless pursuit of justice by the authorities. The story highlights the power of courage in the face of fear, the emotional toll of trauma, and the hope for a better future, despite the darkness of the past. Lucy's determination and the bravery of the police ultimately ensure that justice prevails, offering a glimpse of light at the end of a long and difficult journey. The story begins with a horrific and unexpected moment when 13-year-old Lucy bursts into her small house during a heavy rainstorm carrying two fragile, newborn babies. Covered in blood and mud, her clothes torn to shreds, Lucy's appearance alone sends a chilling shock through the atmosphere. Her voice is trembling with fear as she clutches the babies close, seeking protection from the cold wind and the terrifying situation she's found herself in. Her mother, Mary, immediately becomes overwhelmed with shock and fear, unsure of what is happening. As Lucy tries to explain, the words barely make sense. "It's not me. It's Emma." The mention of Emma, a young girl close to them, immediately triggers a cascade of dread. Emma is dead, and Lucy's grim discovery sets the stage for a crime scene that will uncover deep secrets and spark an investigation into a dark, twisted world. As the police arrive and begin to assess the situation, they discover that the newborns, while weak, are alive. Officer Charles Mitchell and his colleagues are immediately concerned for the safety of the babies, but they cannot ignore the bigger mystery surrounding Lucy's involvement. Lucy is visibly shaken, trembling with every question asked. She can barely recount where she found the babies, but after some encouragement from Officer Valerie Sanders, she admits to having gone to an abandoned warehouse on the southern road. The realization that a crime scene exists at this location leads the police to investigate further. The sight that awaits them at the warehouse is horrifying. Bloodstains, desperate handprints on the walls, and the lifeless body of Emma Foster, a 16-year-old girl, reveal the brutality of the crime. Emma's body is discovered tied to a wooden chair, her pale eyes frozen in fear, confirming the worst. A young life had been stolen, and it was no accident. The officers quickly pieced together that Emma had been held captive, her hands tied for an extended period, and she had fought desperately for her life before succumbing to her injuries. The discovery of a silver necklace in Emma's hand, which Mary had gifted her, intensifies the emotional toll of the situation. The connection between Emma's tragic death and the strange presence of the newborns makes it clear that this is no simple murder. As the investigation deepens, the police are led to the criminal mastermind, James Grayson, a notorious figure linked to human trafficking. Lucy's recognition of him as the person she saw at the warehouse helps the police confirm his identity. He is not just a murderer, but a key player in a dark world of exploitation and illegal activities. His connection to a trafficking ring, specializing in kidnapping young women and selling their newborns worldwide, complicates the case further. Lucy's guilt weighs heavily on her as she recounts the night Emma disappeared. She wishes she could have saved her friend, but the police reassure her that she did everything she could. Her actions, which led to the discovery of the babies, are what ultimately saved them. Still, the pain of losing Emma and the realization that she was too late to help her haunt Lucy, leaving her with deep emotional scars. Yet, despite the trauma, Lucy's bravery remains the key to unraveling the truth behind Emma's death and the dark network of trafficking. As the police close in on James Grayson, they uncover a web of connections involving not just him, but also a larger criminal syndicate that spans multiple countries. The investigation reveals a network of forged documents and illegal adoptions used to smuggle children overseas. James's capture becomes a pivotal moment in the story, not just for the victims he has harmed, but for the authorities determined to dismantle this trafficking ring. Lucy's role in bringing him to justice is nothing short of heroic, but the emotional toll of the experience is not easily erased. In the aftermath of the investigation, the story's focus shifts to healing. With the trafficking ring dismantled and justice served, Mary and Lucy begin to rebuild their lives. The two babies, Gabriel and Sophia, are placed in their care, and Lucy's promise to protect them, just as Emma had protected them, becomes a source of strength for her. The bond between Mary and Lucy grows stronger as they navigate the path toward recovery. Although the emotional scars of the past will never fully heal, their resilience and courage allow them to look toward a brighter future, one where love and compassion replace the shadows of fear and loss. This story underscores the power of determination, the importance of justice, and the enduring strength of family in overcoming even the darkest of circumstances. The story begins with a dramatic and disturbing scene. A 13-year-old girl named Lucy returns home in the middle of a violent rainstorm, carrying two newborn babies. Covered in mud and blood, with her clothes torn, she enters the house in a state of shock and distress. Her terrified eyes and trembling hands reveal the gravity of the situation. Lucy's voice cracks as she calls for her mother, Mary, but what's even more disturbing is the sight of the newborns in her arms. Their faint cries are barely audible, as if the fragile infants could be lost at any moment. Mary, who is startled and confused by the sight, rushes forward to help her daughter, but a horrific metallic scent of blood fills the air, causing her to instinctively pull back. She realizes that Lucy's clothes are soaked not only in blood from the babies, but also from something else dark, dried stains that seem to have a deeper story. In her fear and panic, Lucy murmurs something that makes Mary's heart skip a beat. "It's not me. It's Emma." The mention of Emma, a young girl close to Lucy, instantly raises alarm. Lucy is visibly shaken, her lips pale, and her entire body trembling. She tries to hold the babies tighter, as if afraid they might disappear. The mention of Emma's name makes it clear that something tragic has happened, but the details are still unclear. It's only when the police arrive and start questioning Lucy that the horrific truth begins to emerge. Officer Charles Mitchell and his team begin to investigate the situation, focusing on the newborn's condition. Officer Valerie Sanders carefully examines them, confirming that they are both very weak but still alive. However, the mystery only deepens as Lucy begins to explain the events that led her to the abandoned warehouse near the Southern Road. It's clear that Lucy knows more than she's letting on, but she can barely remember the specifics of how she ended up there, or what exactly happened. Her fragmented memory triggers even more questions, especially when the police begin their investigation at the warehouse. What they discover there is far worse than anyone could have imagined. Bloodstains cover the floor and walls, signs of a violent struggle. Handprints, too small to be an adult's, are pressed into the damp bricks, suggesting someone had fought to escape. In the center of the room, a lifeless body is found tied to a wooden chair, Emma Foster, 16 years old, who had been brutally assaulted and left to die. The revelation sends shockwaves through the room, and the air is thick with the stench of death. Emma's body reveals the horror she endured, and the police realize that she was likely the victim of a human trafficking operation, with the newborn babies left behind as a dark clue to a larger crime. As the investigation deepens, the police discover that Emma had fought for her life. Her wrists show deep ligature marks, indicating she had been tied up for an extended period, and the handprints on the walls suggest she struggled to escape. However, it was too late. She couldn't break free. Her death was a tragedy, but it also revealed something much more sinister. There was a criminal mastermind involved. The investigation leads the police to James Grayson, a notorious figure with connections to a human trafficking ring. Lucy's recognition of him as the person she saw at the warehouse becomes a key part of the investigation. As the truth unfolds, the authorities learn that James is not only responsible for Emma's death, but is also part of a network that abducts women, forces them into pregnancy, and sells their newborns. This discovery sends shockwaves through the police force as they realize that this is part of a much larger operation. As the investigation intensifies, Lucy's guilt weighs heavily on her. She blames herself for not being able to save Emma, but the police reassure her that she did everything she could. Lucy's bravery in leading them to the babies and revealing what little she remembers of the night Emma died ultimately saves the children's lives. While the emotional toll of losing her friend is devastating, Lucy finds a sense of purpose in her actions, knowing that she helped bring justice to Emma and protect the babies from further harm. Despite the pain of her past, Lucy's courage is undeniable. The police, led by Charles Mitchell and Valerie Sanders, work tirelessly to gather evidence and bring down the trafficking ring. As they close in on James Grayson, the story shifts toward healing. The babies, Gabriel and Sophia, are saved, and Lucy promises to protect them, just as Emma had protected them. With the criminals captured and the network dismantled, the focus turns to rebuilding lives. Mary and Lucy, both scarred by the events they have witnessed, begin the difficult journey of recovery. The emotional wounds may never fully heal, but they find solace in the fact that they are no longer alone. They are stronger now, with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. They are ready to start anew, despite the horrors they have faced. The story of Lucy's bravery and the police's relentless pursuit of justice reminds us that even in the darkest times, there is always hope, and love and compassion can light the way to healing. In the midst of a violent rainstorm, a young girl named Lucy rushes into her mother Mary's small home, carrying two newborn babies. The sight of her torn, blood-soaked clothes and the fragile, crying infants in her arms immediately raises alarm. As the storm rages outside, Lucy trembles, her face pale and eyes wide with terror, as she frantically calls for her mother. The unsettling scene is made even more horrifying when Mary notices the blood staining Lucy's clothes, not just from the babies, but from something much darker. In her shock and fear, Lucy utters a name that strikes terror into her mother's heart. It's Emma. Mary's heart skips a beat. Emma, a close friend of Lucy's, has been missing, and now Lucy's cryptic words suggest that something terrible has happened. Lucy clings to the babies, unable to explain how she ended up in this state and what happened to Emma. She seems to be in shock, her mind blocking out the traumatic events she witnessed. Just as the police arrive, Officer Charles Mitchell and his team begin to piece together the details of the crime. A young female officer, Valerie Sanders, examines the babies, confirming that they are in critical condition, but still alive. As the investigation deepens, Lucy's fragmented memories begin to surface. She tells the officers she found the babies at an abandoned warehouse on the southern road, a place she does not clearly remember going to. When questioned about the gruesome bloodshed, she mentions the name Emma again, but her silence on the details only deepens the mystery. The police's investigation into the warehouse reveals a chilling scene. Blood smeared across the floor, signs of a violent struggle, and a young girl, Emma Foster, tied to a wooden chair, lifeless. It becomes clear that Emma was murdered, and the bloodstains and small handprints on the wall suggest she had fought desperately to escape. The officer's grim discovery confirms that this was no ordinary crime. This was likely the work of a human trafficking ring, with Emma being the latest victim. As they piece together the evidence, they learn that Emma had been abducted and left to die in the warehouse. She had been an unwilling participant in the trafficking operation, which used young women like Emma to produce babies for sale. As the investigation unfolds, it's revealed that James Grayson, a man with ties to the underground criminal world, is the likely perpetrator. Lucy, terrified and traumatized, finally speaks up, identifying James as someone she saw at the warehouse. This revelation sparks a series of events that lead the police to discover a horrifying truth. James Grayson is not only responsible for Emma's death, but is also a key player in a larger human trafficking operation, one that traffics newborn babies to illegal buyers. Lucy's emotional turmoil intensifies as she recalls the night Emma disappeared. Emma had called her, terrified, saying someone was watching her and she planned to run away. Lucy, desperate to help, tried to reach her, but by the time she arrived at the warehouse, it was too late. Emma was already dead. The guilt of not being able to save her friend is overwhelming for Lucy, but the police reassure her that she did everything she could. Without Lucy's bravery in bringing the babies to safety and helping the officers understand what happened, more innocent lives could have been lost. Meanwhile, the police continue to gather evidence against James Grayson and his criminal organization. Charles Mitchell, Valerie Sanders, and Robert Pierce, along with the rest of the team, are determined to bring down the entire trafficking ring. They work tirelessly, and their efforts soon lead to a breakthrough: James Grayson's connections to a trafficking syndicate that operates internationally, forging documents to sell children overseas. The team races against time, knowing that the danger posed by James and his associates is far from over. As the investigation intensifies, the police's focus shifts to protecting Lucy and her family. They realize that James will stop at nothing to silence those who have uncovered his crimes. With Lucy and her mother in immediate danger, Charles Mitchell arranges for their protection. However, the threat of violence looms large, and Lucy's fear of James coming after her and the babies only grows stronger. The night of the final showdown arrives. As the police close in on James's hideout, an intense pursuit ensues. Charles, Valerie, and the rest of the team move swiftly to intercept James before he can escape with the babies. The operation is tense, with gunfire and chaos erupting at the abandoned mansion. James, armed and desperate, tries to flee but is eventually captured. His arrest marks the end of his reign of terror, but the damage done to so many lives, including Emma's, can never be undone. In the aftermath of the arrest, Lucy and her mother Mary begin the long process of healing. Lucy struggles with guilt, blaming herself for not saving Emma. But with the support of her mother and the police, she begins to find strength in knowing that the babies are safe and the criminals responsible have been taken down. The trauma of the past still haunts them, but there is hope for a future free of fear. In the end, Lucy's bravery is acknowledged, and her role in bringing down the trafficking ring is celebrated. The babies she saved, Gabriel and Sophia, will have a chance at a better life, thanks to Lucy's actions. While the pain of losing Emma and witnessing such horror will never completely fade, Lucy and her mother can now begin to rebuild their lives, knowing they are safe and surrounded by those who care. This story is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, bravery and determination can shine through, and justice can be served. In the midst of a violent storm, a 13-year-old girl, Lucy, bursts into her home, carrying 2 newborn babies. Her clothes are torn, and she is covered in mud and blood. The sight of her trembling and blood-stained form immediately shocks her mother, Mary. As she looks down at her daughter's frail body, Mary notices the unmistakable bloodstains on Lucy's clothes, not only from the babies, but also from something much more sinister. The babies, small and fragile, cry weakly in Lucy's arms, and the tension in the room builds as the situation unfolds. Lucy's fear is palpable as she whispers, "Emma," confirming her worst fears. Emma, her missing friend, is connected to the horrific events that have transpired. Lucy, trembling and unable to process what's happening, asks Mary to call the police. The officer, Charles Mitchell, and his team rush to the scene, only to uncover that the babies were abandoned in an old warehouse, their cries signaling a desperate plea for help. The investigation deepens, and soon a horrifying discovery is made at the abandoned warehouse. There, in the center of a blood-stained room, they find Emma Foster, a 16-year-old girl, tied to a chair and lifeless. The walls bear the marks of a struggle, with tiny handprints smeared across the surface. The scene is chilling, and Charles Mitchell realizes that this isn't just a murder, it's part of a larger, sinister operation. The discovery of Emma's lifeless body points to a much darker truth: human trafficking. The trafficking ring has been exploiting young women like Emma to breed babies for sale to buyers across borders. Lucy's discovery of Emma's body only adds to the trauma, as she's now forced to confront a painful truth she can barely comprehend. As the investigation continues, Charles and his team focus on the suspect, James Grayson, a man with connections to the underground world of human trafficking. His involvement in the abduction and abuse of young girls has been hidden for years, and Lucy's encounter with him at the warehouse becomes the key to cracking the case wide open. When Lucy speaks to the officers, she recalls Emma's fear the night she went missing. Emma had reached out to Lucy, terrified, saying someone was watching her. She had planned to run away, but by the time Lucy arrived at the warehouse, it was too late. Emma was already dead, and the full extent of the human trafficking ring began to unfold. The police team, led by Charles, unravels more about James Grayson's criminal operation. They uncover that he isn't acting alone, but is instead part of a larger syndicate that specializes in kidnapping women, forcing them into pregnancy, and selling the babies. As the officers investigate, they find links between James Grayson and an underground network operating internationally, forging documents to transport newborns across borders, mostly to Central America and Mexico. The gravity of the situation becomes clear. Emma's murder wasn't an isolated incident, but rather part of an extensive operation. The news that James Grayson is behind the deaths of Emma and many others sends shockwaves through the city. The police intensify their efforts to track him down and dismantle the trafficking network. But James isn't easy to catch. He's always one step ahead, and with every attempt to corner him, he manages to slip away. The officers know time is running out, as they fear for the safety of the babies still trapped in the system. As the investigation intensifies, Lucy struggles with guilt. She blames herself for not getting there in time to save Emma, but Charles reassures her that without her bravery, the babies would have been lost too. Mary, Lucy's mother, is beside herself with worry. She's terrified for her daughter's safety, knowing that James Grayson might come after them next. When Mary receives a call from James, the weight of the threat becomes painfully real. His voice is cold and menacing, as he warns Mary to keep quiet, or else Lucy will suffer the same fate as Emma. The police take immediate action, increasing their protection for Lucy and her mother. Charles Mitchell and his team race against time to find James before it's too late. With each new lead, the police come closer to catching James, but they know that he will stop at nothing to evade capture. The final showdown takes place when the police locate James Grayson's hideout. In a tense confrontation, they manage to corner him, but not before he attempts to flee. The ensuing chase is frantic, with gunshots echoing through the night as the police close in on James. In the end, James is captured, but the damage he's caused remains. Lucy and her mother, while safe, are forever scarred by the horrors they've witnessed. The babies they saved, Gabriel and Sophia, are given a chance at a better life, thanks to Lucy's bravery. However, the pain of losing Emma and the emotional toll of the entire ordeal will stay with them forever. In the aftermath, Lucy's courage is recognized. She becomes a symbol of hope and resilience, showing that even in the darkest moments, there is still the possibility for light. The police continue their work, dismantling the human trafficking operation that has caused so much pain. While justice is served for Emma, the fight isn't over. Charles and his team continue to pursue those responsible for the trafficking, determined to ensure that no more children suffer at the hands of criminals like James Grayson. For Lucy and her mother, their journey of healing has just begun. The road ahead will be long, but they know they have each other and the strength to rebuild their lives, one step at a time. On a stormy night, a 13-year-old girl named Lucy rushes into her home, carrying 2 newborn babies, her clothes torn and covered in mud and blood. The scene is horrifying, and her mother, Mary, is instantly struck with terror. As Lucy enters, she calls out for her mother, her voice weak with fear, and with one glance, Mary sees the 2 fragile infants in Lucy's arms, their cries faint as if they might vanish in the wind. At first, Mary is confused and overwhelmed with panic, but the smell of blood in the air sharpens her senses. It's not just the babies who are covered in blood, Lucy herself is too. With trembling hands, Mary pulls her daughter close, but something is terribly wrong. The blood isn't just from the babies. It's darker, older, and it stirs up memories that make Mary freeze. Lucy mutters the name Emma, a name that has been tied to the disappearance of her friend. This revelation adds layers of fear and confusion. The shock of seeing her daughter in such a state and the mention of Emma brings a rush of emotions, fear, confusion, and a desperate need to understand what has happened. As the police arrive, led by Officer Charles Mitchell, the situation intensifies. The babies are quickly examined by a young officer, Valerie Sanders, who notes that they are still alive but extremely weak and in desperate need of medical care. Meanwhile, Mary struggles to make sense of everything. Lucy, trembling, recounts what little she remembers, speaking of an abandoned warehouse where she found the babies. But she's unable to give a clear account of what happened or how they ended up there. When asked about Emma, Lucy remains silent, her eyes haunted. A search of the warehouse soon uncovers the truth in the most horrific way possible. Emma, the girl who had been missing, was found tied to a chair in the warehouse, her body lifeless, and the walls covered in blood and handprints from her desperate attempts to escape. The officers deduce that this isn't just a murder, it's part of something much bigger, an operation driven by human trafficking. As the investigation unfolds, the team uncovers that Emma had been a victim of a trafficking ring, one that had been using young girls like Emma to breed babies for sale. The police uncover a trail that leads them to the notorious James Grayson, a man deeply involved in this criminal world. He is the key to unraveling the entire operation, but Lucy's experience with him is devastating. As she recounts the night Emma called her, terrified and planning to run away, it's clear that Emma was trying to escape a life of unimaginable horror. But by the time Lucy arrived, it was too late. Emma was already dead, and the nightmare of human trafficking was laid bare before them. James Grayson's involvement in this operation runs deep, and the more the police dig into his past, the more they uncover about his connection to a human trafficking syndicate operating internationally. This syndicate is responsible for abducting young women, forcing them into pregnancy, and selling their babies to the highest bidder. It becomes clear that the babies Lucy saved, Gabriel and Sophia, were part of this horrific system. The more the police investigate, the more they realize that James isn't just a murderer, he's a central figure in a massive underground network. The intensity of the situation increases as Lucy recalls more details of her encounter with James at the warehouse. He threatened her, warning her not to speak out, and the terror she feels only deepens as the investigation reveals that James will stop at nothing to keep his operation running. The police, led by Charles and Valerie, intensify their efforts to catch James, knowing that he will be a dangerous target who will fight back. Their search leads them to more pieces of evidence, and the investigation begins to close in on James's location. But with every new lead, the danger to Lucy and her family escalates. James knows that his time is running out, and he will do anything to stop the police from exposing his trafficking ring. In a tense race against time, the police officers must stop James before he can escape with more children or wreak further havoc. Finally, the operation to catch James culminates in a dangerous standoff. The police raid his hideout, and despite the chaos, they manage to capture him. But while James is arrested, the emotional toll on Lucy and Mary is far from over. For Lucy, the trauma of witnessing Emma's death and the horrors of human trafficking weigh heavily on her. Her bravery in bringing the babies to safety and her role in helping the police are vital, but the emotional scars remain. Lucy and Mary, while safe, must now face the long road to healing. They both come to terms with the horrors of the past, and while justice is served with James's arrest, it's clear that the damage caused by his actions will never be fully undone. In the end, Lucy's courage stands as a beacon of hope. Despite the trauma she faced, she is able to protect the innocent and help bring an end to the horrific trafficking operation. The two babies, Gabriel and Sophia, are given a chance at a better life thanks to Lucy's actions. The story serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a possibility for light, for bravery to emerge, and for justice to be served. Lucy and her mother may never fully recover from the pain they've endured, but they will rebuild, and together they will find peace once again. The fight against human trafficking is far from over, but with courage, determination, and justice, change is possible. On a dark and stormy night, a 13-year-old girl named Lucy rushes into her home, carrying two newborn babies. The shock and terror on her face are palpable as her clothes are torn, covered in mud, and stained with blood. As Lucy steps through the door, her mother, Mary, is paralyzed with disbelief and fear. Lucy trembles, holding the fragile babies tightly in her arms, their cries weak and faint, like they might disappear at any moment. The atmosphere inside their small house is suffocating, the heavy rain outside contrasting sharply with the eerie silence. The foul smell of blood fills the air as Mary rushes to her daughter, but she is immediately struck by the sight of the blood on Lucy's clothes. It isn't just the babies who are covered in blood. There's dark, dried blood smeared all over Lucy's shirt. When Mary tries to comfort her daughter, she notices the dark streaks of blood are not from the babies. Lucy's eyes, wide with fear, finally speak the name Emma, and this instantly chills Mary to the core. Emma, her niece, had been missing for some time, and the mention of her name brings a flood of confusion and panic. Lucy, in a dazed state, tries to explain, but her words are fragmented, and she's unable to give a coherent explanation of what happened. All she knows is that the babies were at the abandoned warehouse near the southern road, and that's where everything turned into a nightmare. Mary is left reeling with emotions that range from confusion to disbelief. She wants to help, but the situation seems beyond comprehension. The police, led by Officer Charles Mitchell, arrive at the house. Officer Mitchell's team works quickly to assess the situation. Lucy, still shaking, tells them bits and pieces of the story, describing the warehouse as the place where she found the babies, but there's more she can't remember. The officers, concerned for the babies' health, quickly move them to the hospital for immediate care. As Officer Valerie Sanders examines the newborns, she confirms their condition is critical, and the hospital rushes them in for emergency treatment. Mary stands by, still unable to grasp the gravity of the situation, struggling to understand how this all came to be. The search for answers leads the police to the abandoned warehouse, where they uncover a horrifying scene. Bloodstains cover the floor, and on the walls, small handprints suggest someone had been desperately trying to escape. In the center of the room, a girl is found, lifeless, her body tied to a wooden chair. The officer's worst fears are confirmed. This is Emma, She's been brutally murdered. The warehouse, now a crime scene, is a chilling testament to the horrors that unfolded there. The investigation reveals that Emma, a 16-year-old girl, had been a victim of human trafficking, and she was likely being used to produce babies for sale. The sheer brutality of her death sends shockwaves through everyone involved. As the investigation unfolds, it becomes clear that Emma was part of a much larger trafficking operation. James Grayson, a man with a history of criminal activities, is believed to be the ringleader of this network, which specializes in kidnapping women, forcing them into pregnancies, and selling their newborns. Lucy, traumatized by what she witnessed at the warehouse, tries to recall more details about the events leading to Emma's death. She recalls hearing Emma's voice on the phone, frightened and begging for help, saying someone was watching her. Lucy tried to reach her, but by the time she arrived at the warehouse, it was too late. The police, now piecing together the details of Emma's life and her brutal end, shift their focus to James Grayson, who has a long criminal history tied to illegal trafficking. As they gather more evidence, they discover Grayson's connections to an underground network operating internationally. This group is responsible for kidnapping young women, forcing them into labor, and selling their children to the highest bidder. The police race against time to apprehend Grayson before he can flee or do more damage. Lucy, although devastated by the loss of her friend, realizes the importance of her role in this investigation. She helped the police identify Grayson and his operation, and her bravery in the face of unimaginable fear allowed the authorities to start dismantling the trafficking ring. The police intensify their efforts to capture Grayson, and eventually, they track him down. A dramatic confrontation ensues when the police raid his hideout, catching him just before he escapes with another group of children. Despite Grayson's attempts to resist, he is arrested and brought to justice. The case doesn't end with his capture, however. The investigation continues, and with each new lead, the police uncover more about the far-reaching scope of the trafficking network. The evidence against Grayson and his accomplices is overwhelming, but his capture marks the beginning of a larger fight against the human trafficking syndicate. In the aftermath, Lucy and Mary struggle to come to terms with everything that has happened. The emotional toll is immense. Mary comforts her daughter, reminding her that she did everything she could to save the babies. Although they couldn't save Emma, Lucy's bravery made all the difference in the lives of Gabriel and Sophia, the two babies she found at the warehouse. In the end, Lucy's courage becomes a beacon of hope, showing that even in the darkest of times, there is always a chance to stand up, fight for what's right, and protect the innocent. The case concludes with Grayson's conviction, and his trafficking network is dismantled. But for Lucy and Mary, the road to healing is just beginning. Though the trauma of their experiences will always linger, they find peace in knowing that justice has been served. The story is a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the importance of standing up against injustice, no matter how frightening or overwhelming it may seem. On a rainy night, a 13-year-old girl named Lucy bursts into her home, carrying two newborn babies. Her clothes are torn, her face pale with fear, and her hands are shaking as she clutches the fragile infants. Mary, her mother, is paralyzed with shock. She rushes to embrace her daughter, but the strong smell of blood fills the air, and she quickly realizes something is terribly wrong. The babies are covered in blood, and so is Lucy, but the stains are not just from the babies. Lucy's shirt is drenched in dark brown streaks of dried blood. As the realization hits her, Mary's heart drops. What happened? Where did this blood come from? Lucy trembles as she holds the babies close, her voice weak and broken. "It's not me, it's Emma," she says, her voice barely audible. Emma, her niece, has been missing for weeks. The mention of Emma's name sends a wave of panic through Mary. She tries to get more information from Lucy, but her daughter is disoriented and unable to explain. The only thing Lucy can remember is that she found the babies in an abandoned warehouse near the southern road, but how did they end up there? Why is Lucy covered in blood, and why did she go there alone? Before Mary can process the overwhelming shock, the police arrive. Officer Charles Mitchell and his team take control of the situation. Lucy is visibly distressed, and Mary can barely hold herself together as she watches her daughter's fragile state. The officers carefully examine the two newborns, noting their critical condition. Lucy's trembling hands and empty eyes are a clear indication that she's gone through something traumatic, but she can't recall the full extent of it. What happened in that abandoned warehouse? Lucy eventually recalls hearing Emma's voice on the phone, desperate and fearful. Emma told her that someone was watching her and that she was going to run away. Lucy, concerned for her friend, raced to the warehouse, only to find Emma already dead. The discovery is horrifying. The police soon find evidence at the warehouse, bloodstains, handprints on the walls, and a chair where Emma was bound. It's clear that she fought for her life, but she didn't survive. The tragic truth is revealed. Emma was brutally murdered, and her death seems tied to a human trafficking ring. The investigation takes a darker turn as the officers discover that Emma was part of a network involved in human trafficking. The person behind it all is a man named James Grayson, a criminal with a long history of kidnapping women, forcing them into pregnancies and selling their newborns. Grayson's involvement in this sick operation is only the tip of the iceberg. The police quickly realize that the situation is far worse than they had initially imagined. As the investigation unfolds, Lucy's role becomes even more critical. Without her, the police would have never connected the dots. She's able to provide information that leads them to James Grayson, but the trauma she's experienced is far from over. Despite everything, she feels guilty that she couldn't save Emma, even though she tried. She blames herself for not arriving in time to save her friend. The police intensify their efforts to apprehend Grayson. They discover that he is part of a much larger network that has been trafficking newborn babies internationally. The operation is sophisticated, with forged documents used to make the trafficking seem legal. The police are now racing against time to capture Grayson and dismantle the entire operation before more lives are destroyed. James Grayson's capture is hard fought. The police track him to an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of the city. A dramatic confrontation takes place, and although Grayson tries to resist, he is arrested. The authorities quickly learn that Grayson was just a small part of a much bigger syndicate. His arrest is just the beginning. The investigation shifts to uncover the extent of the trafficking ring and to bring down the entire operation. For Lucy, the trauma doesn't end with the arrest. She is haunted by the memories of Emma's death, and the guilt of not being able to save her weighs heavily on her. However, through the investigation, she finds solace in knowing that her bravery helped save the lives of 2 innocent babies. Grayson is brought to trial, and his crimes are exposed to the world. The case makes headlines, and the public is shocked by the scale of the operation. In the aftermath, Lucy and Mary find themselves in a position of both relief and sorrow. While the police have brought justice for Emma, the emotional scars of the ordeal are far from healed. Lucy has become a hero in her own right, but the trauma of seeing her friend's death and the horrors of the trafficking ring will linger with her for the rest of her life. The healing process will be long, but with the support of her mother, she begins to rebuild her life. Charles Mitchell, the lead officer in the case, assures Lucy that Grayson's arrest is just the beginning. The fight isn't over, and more criminals will be caught, but for now, the immediate danger is over. As the case unfolds and the syndicate is dismantled, Lucy finds strength in knowing she made a difference. The journey isn't easy, but the small victories are a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is hope. Lucy's story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of standing up against evil, no matter how terrifying the situation may seem. On a stormy night, 13-year-old Lucy rushed into her home, carrying 2 fragile newborn babies in her arms. Her clothes were torn, blood-stained, and covered in mud, leaving her mother, Mary, completely stunned by the sight. The heavy rain continued to pour down outside, but inside the house, there was an eerie silence, broken only by the faint cries of the babies in Lucy's arms. Mary was shocked and immediately pulled her daughter into a protective embrace, but the moment she smelled the metallic scent of blood, she instinctively pulled away. Looking at Lucy, she noticed the dark brown streaks of dried blood on her shirt. She panicked, thinking Lucy might have been hurt, but Lucy quickly reassured her that it wasn't her blood, it was Emma's. Emma, Lucy's cousin, had been missing for weeks. Her mother, Mary's niece, had disappeared without a trace. The mention of her name sent a chill through Mary, and her heart sank. She demanded that Lucy explain what had happened, but Lucy, too shaken to speak coherently, could only point to the 2 newborns in her arms. Mary immediately called 911, and the police arrived soon after. Officer Charles Mitchell and his team began assessing the situation, with one of the officers, Valerie Sanders, taking care of the babies. The babies were weak, and the situation was dire. The police were trying to piece together what had happened, but Lucy could only recall bits and pieces. Lucy was unable to remember much of what transpired in the hours before her arrival home. She explained in broken words that she had found the babies in an abandoned warehouse near the southern road. The realization that she had gone to such a dangerous place alone filled Mary with dread. What had Lucy encountered there? Why was she alone? Lucy was unable to answer, and her confusion deepened as she relived the events in her mind. Officer Mitchell ordered a search of the warehouse, and what they found there left everyone horrified. Bloodstains smeared across the floor, handprints on the walls, and a girl bound to a chair, Emma. Emma was dead. The evidence at the scene revealed the brutality of her death. She had been tied up, fought for her life, but ultimately succumbed to the hands of a murderer. In the midst of the search, the police discovered a silver necklace that Mary had given Emma for her birthday. It was an unmistakable sign that Emma had been the victim of something far more sinister. The gruesome scene at the warehouse was a result of a larger human trafficking operation led by a man named James Grayson. James Grayson was no stranger to the authorities. He was involved in a series of crimes, including kidnapping and trafficking young women. Lucy's role in uncovering this dark world became evident as she recalled Emma's last phone call. Emma had been terrified and mentioned that someone was watching her. She had been planning to run away, but when Lucy arrived at the warehouse, Emma had already been killed. Lucy's guilt was overwhelming, but she had done everything she could to get there in time. The police, however, had more pressing matters. They needed to catch James Grayson, the man responsible for the destruction of so many lives. With Lucy's help, the police were able to connect James Grayson to a larger network of traffickers. This organization, spanning across Central America, was responsible for kidnapping women, forcing them into pregnancies, and selling their babies. The operation was sophisticated, with forged documents and illegal adoptions, but the authorities were determined to take it down. As the investigation intensified, it became clear that this wasn't just a random crime, it was part of a much bigger operation. The authorities worked tirelessly, but James Grayson continued to evade capture. He had ties to underground organizations that specialized in selling newborns overseas, and he had been operating under the radar for years. But with each new lead, the police got closer to bringing him to justice. Charles Mitchell, the lead investigator, remained focused on the goal of ending the trafficking ring, knowing that it was the only way to protect vulnerable women and children from further exploitation. After a series of harrowing events, the police finally tracked James to a mansion on the outskirts of the city. They stormed the building, apprehending Grayson and discovering more evidence of his crimes. In a dramatic confrontation, Grayson was arrested and brought to trial for his involvement in Emma's murder and the human trafficking network he ran. The case garnered widespread attention, and justice seemed to be within reach. But even with his capture, the trauma left behind by Grayson's actions weighed heavily on Lucy. As the investigation continued, Lucy grappled with the guilt of not being able to save Emma. The haunting memories of the warehouse, where her cousin had died, continued to plague her. She knew that she had played a crucial role in stopping the operation, but the emotional toll was immense. With her mother's support, Lucy slowly began to heal, though the scars would never fully disappear. The trial of James Grayson marked the end of one chapter, but it was just the beginning of the healing process for Lucy and her family. While justice had been served, the pain of loss and the fear of what could have happened were still fresh in their minds. But the love and resilience of Lucy's family helped her find the strength to move forward. She had saved lives, and in the process, she learned that even in the darkest of times, there was hope. The story of Lucy and her courage in the face of unimaginable circumstances conveys powerful life lessons about resilience, the importance of family, and the strength to face one's darkest fears. First and foremost, it highlights how the bond between a mother and child can provide the foundation for survival in the face of overwhelming adversity. Lucy's love for the abandoned babies and her determination to protect them despite her own trauma reflects the profound strength of parental love and sacrifice. It teaches us that, even in the darkest moments, love remains a guiding light that can lead to action and healing. Moreover, the story emphasizes the importance of confronting and speaking out against evil, no matter how terrifying or dangerous it may seem. Lucy's ability to relay the truth, even when it brought her great fear and anguish, shows that sometimes facing our past or our fears is the only way to break free and heal. This resonates deeply for many of us in our later years. Our pasts may hold painful memories, but it is only through confronting and accepting them that we can truly move forward. The story also serves as a reminder of the strength we all possess to protect those we love and to stand up against injustice. It teaches that, no matter the age, we can all be catalysts for change and redemption. Lastly, it speaks to the value of community and the importance of supporting each other through difficult times. In the end, it is our connections with others, our family, friends, and even strangers that give us the strength to endure and to find peace again. Thank you for watching this gripping tale of bravery and resilience. We hope it inspires you to stand up against injustice, just like Lucy did. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to Stories TH for more heart-pounding stories. Stay safe and be aware there's always more to uncover.